You're at the high nibble for the more significant bits. Well, it's been a long while since I've made a feature video, but there are definitely some new features that have been added to the IMSAI 8080 ESP in recent times, and there will be a series of videos made going into detail on each of the new features, but today something a little different. Today it's martini time, and the reason for this is that ever since I first got to play with the Dazzler, the Cromemco Dazzler, I've been interested in getting the Magenta Martini demo running. And when I've found the files for it, you get the assembly source code targeting Cromemco hardware and with a few edits available for the Altair, and the actual data for the Magenta Martini demo is effectively a paper tape image. And for lack of a paper tape reader until recently, it hasn't been accessible. So in the spirit of a little bit of software archaeology, we're going to put the new paper tape reader on the IMSAI to work today and start from a clean slate and actually build the a ROM file and load it up and use that to read the Magenta Martini paper tape. So let's get things set up on the desktop. We'll open the teletype, the TTY window, the Dazzler and the paper tape reader, and boot CPM. I've got things configured in a sort of stock way at the moment for CPM 2.2, and I've set up a blank disk already, so let's just check. Oh, there's something hiding there. Let's erase that. And so now we have a blank disk. And let's start with the Dazzlemation assembler source code on paper tape. So we'll load this ASM file as a paper tape image. Now, the only modification that I've made, having sourced this from Udo Monk's Z80 Pack website, the only modification I've made to this file is to run it through Unix to DOS, just to make sure that it has carriage return line feeds at the end of each line. Okay, so here it is as a paper tape, and we can simply use pip to read that in. And we'll kick off the tape read. Now, it is worth mentioning that this file is about almost 32K long, and at 50 characters per second, this tape is going to take around 10.5 minutes to load. So I will leave it run for those of you who want to watch it as every byte goes through. But if you want to fast forward by about 10.5 minutes in the video, you'll get to the next step much more quickly. Right, and there we go. Now, you'll notice that pip hasn't finished because there's no CPM end of file at the end of this tape. So on the paper tape reader, I've included an end of file button, just sends the right end of file character so pip knows that you've reached the end. And I think you'll agree that 50 characters per second is pretty fast. Bear in mind, if we'd been loading this on a teletype, an ASR33 at 10 characters per second, this would have taken about 5 times longer, or roughly an hour. So a good job there from the paper tape reader. So when we have a look at what we've now got on the disk, we've got the assembly source file. We'll just check the length, and we can see it's the full 32K. Now, I've been through this source before, and there's some small edits we need to make for the IMSAI. So I'll just fire up WordMaster in ANSI mode. And we'll just make the few small edits that are required. So if we scroll down, you can see that the input and output ports and status bits are here for the Cromemco machine. And we'll just comment those out. And then they've included values for an altair, which are pretty close to what we need. So we'll just uncomment those and just change the data and status ports for the IMSAI. The other things, which probably won't affect what we're doing here today, but there's some mention here about how this code was written with a teletype in mind. So there's some strange things going on with some of the control characters. So we'll just edit it to be suitable for a normal Control Z from the keyboard. And then we're ready to save that back to disk. And we can proceed directly to assembling it. So the point of this is we're generating a hex file that will load back onto the IMSAI and boot directly as on that boot that code as if it's mounted as a ROM. The code starts at address 0 and uses the RST jump vectors, so you can't relocate it to 100 to run it under CPM, unfortunately. Okay, now while we're here, I'll show another feature that's been added to the desktop recently. You'll notice we generate a PRN file, and when we want to view that, we'd normally fire up the line printer, LPT. I'm going to put that in a separate window over here, and let's just send that to the printer. And you'll notice that some of the comments are wider than the width of our 80-column printer. So we don't get a full view of everything that's being sent to the printer. It just truncates at the end of the line. So what we can do is use the new 132-column mode on the line printer. So as soon as it finishes, there we go, and it's just another paper type. So as we scroll through the paper types, we get into the 132-column paper types, and if we open up the width of the printer there, now we get to read the full width of the comments in the assembly output file. So that's a nice new feature. I'll just minimize that so it's out of the way. And then, so the other thing we have is the hex file here. So we'll want to now punch that to tape. So we'll clear the tape and use pip again, but this time we will send to the paper tape punch, and we'll output the hex file. Now the hex file is only about 4K, so a lot shorter and quicker. And now we can just download that to our local file system, and you can see we've created a file called tape.bin. That's the default for whenever you download the paper tape. I might just jump into a terminal and rename that. Now, what I will save you the trouble of watching is getting this back onto the IMSAI as a bootable ROM image. It sort of made me aware that we probably need something new on the desktop to enable a drag and drop sort of upload of ROM images into the IMSAI, but that's a feature that's yet to come. So, what I will show you though is that we've been using the paper tape in its default mode when it's on SIO2 port A, and for the next step we actually need it to be on the same port, on the same SIO port as the TTY window. So we're going to use the new HAL features to do that. So you can see I've got a HAL config line prepared here that puts the web paper tape reader right before the web TTY. And you'll notice I've included this plus symbol, and this is a follow through or fall through symbol, which means if the paper tape reader is connected, then input can come from the paper tape reader, but you can still type on the web TTY, even if there's no, even if the web paper tape reader is connected. And so that gives you a behavior that's a lot like the way that the Teletype ASR33 works. Just to be clean and tidy, we'll also take the paper tape reader off SIO2 port A. Save that back. And the other thing that I say I'll do off camera is to load the hex file as a ROM. So we'll just configure to be able to boot that from here. So it's going to be dzmation hex, and we'll save that. Okay, so I'm ready to reboot the IMSAI. When I do reboot it, I'll be going into the boot configuration and setting it to use ROM 7, so that when we come up, we're not booting CPM, we're booting straight into this ROM that we've just assembled for the Dazzlemation code. Now this, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked through the code to see, but I'm running this in Z80 mode just to be sure that we're not using any, just in case there's any Z80 specific opcodes. Given that it was originally written to run on a Cromemco Z1, which was always a Z80 based machine. Okay, so I've booted the IMSAI and I've set it to load directly into the Dazzlemation ROM, and I'll hit the run toggle, and you can see there's no output on the teletype window, TTY window, but we have a flashing cursor on the Dazzler. And so there's a series of keyboard controls that are all covered in the Dazzlemation documentation. They'll let you move the cursor around, and there we go, move the cursor around, lay down colors, red, green, blue, yellow, cyan, purple, magenta, key to this demonstration I guess, given that it's the Magenta Martini, white and black. So have I missed something? Yellow, oh, a little bit of yellow. Rightio, so let's reset Dazzlemation and open up the paper tape reader again, and this time we will get the Magenta Martini paper tape image. Now if we go into a if I just bring up a terminal on my Mac and we just cat the contents of that file, oh, not that, but cat, you can see it's just effectively macros or keyboard input, the same as the same sort of keys I was pressing to move the cursor around and lay color down. So really it's just another input stream as if you're typing on the keyboard in Dazzlemation. All right, paper tape loaded, connect the paper tape reader, and here we go. So while the cursor is visible, this is it reading in the instructions from the paper tape for the animation. And once the cursor disappears, it's now running the animation. And at this point, it's also paying attention to the programmable input keys on the front of the IMSAI. So it's running at the slowest possible speed. So we're not even seeing it redraw because it's redrawing over what's already on the screen. So we can speed it up to its highest speed, and you can actually see that it is redrawing. And I'm going to do a Control X to stop it. Let me do that. Click it, get the keyboard focus. Control X to stop it, and we're back in edit mode, because the one thing it's not doing is clearing the screen, which makes the animation seem a little incomplete. So I'm going to add one extra step to the animation, which is the clear screen instruction, and then we'll simply restart the animation and slow it down to something a bit more reasonable, and we get to watch it redraw Magenta Martini. Right, well I'm just going to leave that running, but I hope it gives you a little appreciation for the sort of things that we can now do again now that we have a paper tape punch and reader. Also a quick look at the 132 column mode on the line printer. As I say, I've been waiting a couple of years to see the Magenta Martini demo run on the IMSAI, and it's needed the paper tape reader to make it possible. So I'll give you a couple of minutes of outro so you can just sit back, enjoy the music, and enjoy the Magenta Martini.